Why can't we love our work? It's clear more than ever we live in a society where people really want to love their work. A few weeks ago in the Wall Street Journal, there was an article that was entitled, "I Don't Have a Job, I Have a Higher Calling." And in this article, the author Rachel Feinzink writes this: in part, professionals are demanding more meaning from their careers because work simply takes up more of their life than before. Thanks to longer hours, competitive pressures, and technological tethers of the modern job, meanwhile, traditional sources of meaning and purpose, such as religion, have receded in many corners of the country. The words mission, higher purpose, change the world, or changing the world were mentioned on earnings callings and investor meetings and industry conferences 3,243 times in 2014, up from 2,318 5 years ago, according to a Factiva search. We live in a culture today where people are desperately looking for jobs that they can love, jobs that give people a sense of deep meaning and purpose. And you see that especially in the millennial generation. And why is it that when we look at the last 20 years, the hunger and the desire to find work in this deeply fulfilling way has increased? And I want to take us through the last 20 years to give a bit of background to understand why this idea of changing the world has become so significant when we think about the nature of work. Let me just warn you, this is not the prettiest picture as I paint the last 2 decades of the changes that have happened in our society. Back in 1998, in the realm of government and politics, we had the Clinton-Lewinsky scandal, and while President Clinton was not acquitted of the charges, or he was acquitted by the Senate of his impeachment charges, that this brought to the highest office in our land these allegations of sexual misconduct. Secondly, in 2001, we experienced a kind of terror and horror that we had never experienced, at least this side of the Atlantic. And as teenagers, people growing up saw for the first time some significant domestic violence. When we look at the aspect of horror and terror in America, let me just take you through some of the things that we've witnessed. We witnessed shootings from Columbine in Virginia Tech, Sandy Hook in the elementary school. And then we realized that terror could not only strike in the halls of power, but also in the most unsuspecting places, like movie theaters, like the final yards of a marathon, making the world seem even more dangerous, capricious, and random. In the area of large corporations in 2001, the Enron Corporation was embroiled in a scandal that involved the deliberate mismanagement of billions of dollars, which led to what was at that time the largest corporate bankruptcy. The Enron scandal was then followed by the discrediting of one of the world's largest audit companies, Arthur Andersen, and shortly after, another major corporation, WorldCom, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy due to accounting scandals that inflated the company's assets by approximately $11 billion. And then in 2002, the Boston Globe exposed a series of sexual abuse scandals in the Catholic Diocese of Boston, one of the largest Catholic dioceses in America. And the Globe revealed that the Catholic Church had been aware of patterns of sexual abuse and chose to cover up these incidents. The expose began a frenzy of media investigations that continues to this day with accusations in the thousands. Then in our economy, in 2008, a key corporation, the Lehman Brothers, America's 4th largest investment bank, declared bankruptcy, contributing to what would become a global recession in 2009. Now that's just the last 16 years. And you can understand why people have now equated a desire for meaning and their jobs to changing the world. And this hunger to find the right job that has a sense of impact has increased our desire to want to love our job. We really want to find work that we can sincerely say we love. But let me go deeper and ask the question, why can't we find jobs that we love? And circumstances are certainly a part of it, but there's a deeper element I think that the scriptures begin to expose with respect to why we can't love our jobs. And when we look a little bit deeper, a big part of our dissatisfaction with our work is from the fact that we want our work to love us. You see, we can't love our work because we want our work to do something it was never designed to do. We want our work to give us a sense of our identity, of our worth, of our value, and our security, and we end up placing upon work a weight that it can't hold. Imagine for some of you sitting in front of your supervisor or your boss, and you're getting a performance review. And they say a couple positive things about what you've done in the past quarter or the past year, and then they start to criticize some of the things that you've done as well, areas of improvement. But as you hear it, very few of us can listen with a heart that genuinely is open to the areas of improvement. Instinctively, we get defensive about what we hear. We get defensive because we realize what they are talking about is not just our job performance. They're talking about us. And it cuts deep even when we begin to fail in areas that we can grow and improve in because, again, our hearts have placed the weight of our identity and our worth in our jobs. Whether you're a house mother, taking care of your children day in and day out, or you're a CEO running a company, or you're a student studying for your finals, all of us at every stage of life can have a challenge of finding our identity in our work, our identity in our work. And when we begin to peel the layers, we desperately want to find a sense of our value from what we do day in and day out. But here's how the gospel renews and changes all that. When we look at the scriptures, Paul writes that we have been called into a body from which we have received a calling. Ephesians 4:1 uses that phrase, that word calling twice. And he begins to say, what you do, if I could paraphrase what he's saying, what you do flows out of who you have become in Christ. That in the gospel we have received and been renewed in our identity as children of God, receiving an identity that we can never earn or merit no matter how hard we worked, no matter how high you climbed in the corporate ladder. You could receive all the accolades and the awards of your community and yet never feel satisfied in the work that you do because, again, work was never meant to have that weight. You see, work was never meant to be the source of our identity, but the expression of it. And in the gospel, we have a powerful renewal of our identity. As people created in His image, we now can see our work properly. We can now love and serve our work because it's not the source of our identity. We can see the value that our work brings to the people around us and the value that that brings to our communities and to our sectors and to our industries. And we can begin to approach our work in a way that is very different, I think, from the average person working on the ground. Because we see this as part of our calling. And the Christian notion of calling begins with this: who you are is the basis of what you do. And so when we decouple the weight of our identity, our value, and worth from our work and onto the gospel, we begin to work in a way that we can actually serve the work and not have the work try to serve us. And we understand this explicitly. We understand that our work should be the expression of our identity when you look at a child. Imagine if a child came up to you and gave you a drawing that they spent hours creating, and you just looked at the drawing and you crumpled up the piece of paper and you put it in the trash can and you looked at the child and said, "I don't love this, I love you." And the child would just look at you and just start to cry. Because instinctively, the child knows that the work is an expression of our identity. You see, in the gospel, God has made us children again. That the work that we do flows out of who we are as God's dearly beloved children. Thank you.